Hello everyone, this is Lakhi. Welcome to another episode of Learn with Me series. Today we'll be doing cell adaptations. So let's get started. Cell adaptations. So if a cell undergoes stress which may lead to adaptation, either adaptation or injury. Today we'll try to learn all about cell adaptation. In the next video I'll try to upload it as soon as possible about cell injury. So let's get started with cell adaptation. There are 5 types of situations where cell may adapt itself in stressful situations: atrophy, hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, and dysplasia. We'll take each of the topics one by one. Let's start with atrophy. So atrophy is the reduction in number and size of the parenchyma cells of an organ or its parts which was once normal. So here the size as well as the number of cells are decreasing. There are 2 other terms which we can be confused with atrophy is hypoplasia and aplasia. Hypoplasia is developmentally small size. From the birth itself, the size of the tissue or the organ is small. And aplasia is the extreme failure of development. The tissue or the organ itself failed to develop, leaving rudimentary tissues. Okay, so the atrophy can be physiological as well as pathological. Physiological, for some examples are lymphoid tissue, thymus, gonads after menopause, brain. So these tissues or organs may undergo atrophy while increasing age. Okay, so pathological situations are involved in situations where disorders or diseases are present in the individual, like starvation atrophy. Here first the body will utilize carbohydrate, then fats, and then protein. So while the person is in a starvation mode, means he's starving itself, the body will show atrophy in this direction. Ischemic atrophy, if there is a atherosclerosis involving kidney or the brain, so it will be respectively leads to atrophy of the particular organs. Thirdly, disuse atrophy. Here there is a decrease in prolonged functional activity. So for a long period of time the organ or the tissue are not being used, so that's why they show atrophy. For example, if there is a fracture of the bone, so we put the joint or the bone in cast, so which lead to limb immobilization. So this prolonged limb immobilization may lead to wasting of muscle. Another example is myopathies. Neuropathic atrophy, this is due to interruption in the nerve supply. If there is a lack of nerve supply to the particular area, which will leads to wasting of the muscle. Other examples include poliomyelitis, motor neuron disease. Fifth one is endocrine atrophy, which is due to loss of endocrine regulatory mechanism. If the endocrine regulatory mechanism is lacking, the organ will show atrophy. For example, hypoparathyroidism, where the parathyroid hormone is less, so this will lead to atrophy of thyroid, adrenal, and gonads. Same hypothyroidism situation, it will show atrophy of skin and its adnexal structures. Okay, so the last one probably is the pressure atrophy. So due to prolonged pressure of a particular tissue or organ, because it may be because of benign tumor or cyst or aneurysm, which will lead to compression of the tissue and which will show atrophy. So these are the example of pressure atrophy. Like in case of tumors related to nerve root, it will show erosion of spine. In meningioma, will show erosion of skull. In case of aneurysm of arch of aorta, it will lead to erosion of sternum. Another important point to be noted, which may come in an MCQ, is a mechanism of atrophy. It is due to activation of ubiquitin proteasome pathway. Okay, memorize this one. So the next cellular adaptation is hypertrophy after atrophy. So hypertrophy is the increase in size of the cells, parenchyma cells. So here the size of a particular cell is increasing, okay, which will lead to enlargement of the structure. There is no change in number of cells, and there are 2 causes. Probable cause is an increase in functional demand. If the workload of the particular thing is increased, then it may show hypertrophy, or if there is stimulus, hormonal stimulation, then it will show hypertrophy. Hypertrophy can be again physiological, pathologic. So here you can see activation in physiologic hypertrophy. You can see activation of phosphainositide 3 kinase pathway. Activation of phosphainositide 3 kinase pathway. So this is an example of physiologic hypertrophy. The base example is in bodybuilders. Because of increase in workload to the muscles, the skeletal muscle will show hypertrophy. In pathological conditions, for example in the heart, mechanism is downstreaming of G protein coupled receptor, SMARCB. Okay, the base example is, so this is a heart, okay. So if there is a systemic hypertension, this is the aorta, so due to systemic hypertension, the pumping of the blood from the left ventricle is hard. So more workload in left ventricle can be seen, so that's why there will be left ventricular hypertrophy. So this is an example of pathological hypertrophy. Another thing to be memorized is the cardiac hypertrophy or left ventricular hypertrophy associated with overexpression of this gene, atrial natriuretic factor gene. Okay, please remember this. Another important point is compensatory hypertrophy. So if there is there are two organs in the body, and if one organ is removed, the other organ will show hypertrophy. The best example is nephrectomy. If one kidney is removed, the other kidney will show hypertrophy. In this case, there will be also hyperplasia. Means hypertrophy means increase in size of the cell, and hyperplasia means increase in number of the cells. The both will be seen in nephrectomy situation. Adrenal hyperplasia is also an example of the same. Then the third cellular adaptation is hyperplasia. I have already told you, increase in the number of parenchymal cells. Hypertrophy was increase in size, and hyperplasia is increase in number of cells, which will lead to enlargement of the structure. The main cause is due to the stimulation of the cells, which are at the resting stage. That means G0 phase of cell cycle. They will go mitosis. So this way there is an increase in the number of cells. So again, hyperplasia can be physiologic and pathologic. In physiologic, examples include hemorrhage will lead to bone marrow hyperplasia, and again liver cell regeneration. So liver cell regeneration are another very important example. So if we cut a part of the liver, so the other part of the liver which remains will regenerate. So this is an example of hyperplasia, physiologic hyperplasia. The next one is pathologic hyperplasia. Examples include benign prostatic hyperplasia due to increase in testosterone, endometrial cell hyperplasia due to increase in estrogen. This is seen in males, and this is seen in females. So here stimulus is hormones. Just like I told you previously, this is a testosterone. Testosterone is the stimulus in benign prostatic hyperplasia, and increase in estrogen is the stimulus for endometrial cell hyperplasia seen in females. Another example in warts due to human papillomavirus infection. Okay. Another important point is hyperplasia and hypertrophy seen together. There are some situations. So the most prevalent situation is enlargement of breast during puberty and pregnancy. So in puberty and pregnancy, we can see enlargement of the breast, which is due to hyperplasia as well as hypertrophy. Another example is pregnant uterus. In lactating breast, it is only hypertrophy seen, not hyperplasia. Okay, the size increase, not the number of cells. Okay, then the next cellular adaptation is metaplasia. Here one differentiated cell is converted to another differentiated cell. It is due to abnormal stimulus. Due to abnormal stimulus, the cell undergo metaplasia. It may revert back to normal or removal of the stimulus. If the stimulus is removed, it may revert back to its normal structure. If the stimulus persists, then the cell first show metaplasia, and it may show then dysplasia. Okay, dysplasia, abnormal structures are formed. We'll see in the future slides. And then this may lead to cancer eventually if the stimulus is not removed. This mechanism of metaplasia include reprogramming of stem cells. The stem cells are reprogrammed. This may lead to metaplasia. The metaplasia are of two types. It may be epithelial metaplasia or mesenchymal metaplasia. The epithelial metaplasia, there are very important examples. Like first example is bronchus. So in chronic smokers, this is lung and this is bronchus. So in chronic smokers, the bronchus epithelium is usually columnar epithelium in bronchus. But in smokers, due to different situation, smoking stimulus, the columnar epithelium will undergo metastasis to form squamous epithelium. This is the most common metaplasia seen in humans. Okay. The next example of epithelial metaplasia is Barrett's esophagus. So Barrett's esophagus. So in cases like gastroesophageal reflux, where in stomach the hydrochloric acid or the acid goes back to the esophagus, so esophagus is commonly composed of squamous epithelium. So in cases like gastroesophageal reflux disease, the epithelium of the lower third of the esophagus undergo metaplasia to form columnar epithelium, and this phenomenon is called Barrett's esophagus. There may be infection like histosoma in urinary bladder, in which transitional epithelium undergo metaplasia to form squamous epithelium. Now let's go and understand mesenchymal metaplasia. The most important example of mesenchymal metaplasia is myositis ossificans, where in muscles bony like structures are formed. So this is a disease, myositis ossificans, where in the muscle bone-like structures are formed. Okay. So the last topic of cellular adaptation is dysplasia. The detail about the dysplasia we'll learn in the future videos. So make sure you subscribe to my channel and press the bell icon so you don't miss any of the videos. So dysplasia, just a brief about dysplasia in this topic. It is a disordered cellular development. Disordered cellular development. So I already told you previously that if the stimulus persists in case of metaplasia, it may undergo dysplastic changes and dysplasia may be seen, and eventually cancer. It is preceded or accompanied by metaplasia and hyperplasia. Definitely, if there is dysplastic changes, metaplasia and hyperplasia may be seen. The most common site are uterine cervix and bronchus. Dysplasia can be divided depending on grades of its severity into mild, moderate, and severe. And another important point is carcinoma in situ. It is a change in all the layers above the basement membrane. The dysplastic changes are seen in all the layers above the basement membrane. So that's all in this topic for cellular adaptations. In the next video, we'll try to cover few of the important topics of cell injury, mainly necrosis, which is very important for the exam point of view. So that's all for today. Thank you for watching.